what can we expect from GPS watches in 2025? Well, I have some ideas, some of which are blatantly obvious and probably more realistic, others that are more maybe optimistic trends or maybe hopeful predictions. But let's start with some of the super obvious trends that we've already been observing and trends that are highly likely to continue into 2025. Now in 2023 and 2024, we started to see more and more watch brands gravitating away from memory and pixel displays or MIP displays and using these extremely bright and vibrant AMOLED screens instead. And actually, Apple's been doing this for a long time, but Garmin, they actually reintroduced the Garmin Epix in 2022, which ended up being basically an AMOLED version of its extremely popular Phoenix series device. The Epix was so popular, in fact, that recently Garmin made the difficult decision to discontinue the Epix series devices and use an AMOLED screen on the base Phoenix models or the default Phoenix models. There are a few variations of the Phoenix. There is still an option for a MIP style display. But even Garmin's fitness-focused Forerunner series of watches have pretty much all transitioned from the memory and pixel displays that are on the Forerunner 55 model, the Forerunner 255 and the 955 models to an AMOLED that's on the 165, 265 and 965 watches. Other brands are following suit. Polar with its Vantage V3, Vantage M3, and its Grit X2 Pro. They're all now all AMOLED watches. Suunto has a mix of different watches with different display types, but their Suunto Race and their Race S are extremely popular with AMOLED screens. And even Coros, who we all thought would be maybe the last to hold out, have recently switched to an AMOLED display with their recent Coros Pace Pro watch. And I actually think it's fair to say that these displays are very popular with buyers. All of these brands wouldn't be switching if that weren't the case. Why are these screens so much more popular? Well, they're significantly brighter, they're much sharper with roughly double the screen resolution of their memory and pixel counterparts. And just putting these watches side by side, people are tending to gravitate towards the AMOLED displays. The problem is they're definitely not as energy efficient as memory and pixel displays. So we end up with workarounds like raise to wake, where the display is actually turned off and only turned on when you actually raise your wrist to look at your watch display. But either way, it's been pretty obvious over the last 2 or 3 years that AMOLED is slowly and steadily eating away at the memory and pixel display market, and I definitely do not see this trend changing in 2025. Now, features previously found in high-end models will definitely trickle down to more affordable options in 2025, which is by no means a trend that's specific to this market. In fact, it probably predates this entire market completely, but it doesn't make me any less excited for features like training readiness to come trickle down to entry-level devices. I'd also love to see Garmin bring activity types like triathlon all the way down to their even most basic models. I can't see any reason that there's anything holding back the Forerunner 165 from having features like training readiness or triathlon features, or any of the other advanced features for that matter that Garmin is siloing for their more expensive devices. But ultimately, I'd love to see all of these manufacturers allow any software features that the hardware can handle be allowed on these devices. And here's the thing, we've actually already been seeing this trend at the end of 2024 with devices like Polar's Vantage M3 getting pretty much every feature, pretty much the entire software feature set from the Vantage V3 and the Grit X Pro, just in a different hardware package. Again, Apple's been doing this for years, and yeah, it might make for less ways to carve up and distinguish between your product line, but it's also easier to maintain from a software engineering standpoint. Now, speaking of rolling down features, I suspect that we'll also see a few hardware features roll down to more and more devices. More advanced GPS watches, like the Apple Watch Ultra and the Garmin Fenix, have added dive capabilities over the past few years, and even Amazfit added dive capabilities to their latest and greatest T-Rex 3 watch. To me, it feels like dive capabilities is just the latest and greatest feature to get added to the whatever we have, like the checklist full of features that these GPS watches are now expected to have. And now that this is on the checklist, I suspect that other brands, other manufacturers are going to implement dive capabilities just to keep up in the future, which definitely makes us think, yeah, some companies are going to add this, or I guess I should say, some companies are going to implement this feature significantly better than others. Now, Garmin has also introduced a microphone and a speaker to their top-of-the-line, do-everything watch, the Garmin Fenix 8 recently. Now, I suspect that having access to the voice assistant on your smartphone is going to become more and more important as artificial intelligence gets more and more capable over the next few years. So I suspect that having a microphone and speaker on your watch is going to be more and more helpful. Now, sadly, in its current form, and I just think the way things are set up currently, I can probably count on one hand the amount of times that I've actually used the microphone on my Fenix 8, and I've had it for around 100 days at this point. And most of those were actually to demo the features that you can do with this watch through voice, just demo it for you guys. That being said, I do feel like we're still gonna see microphones and speakers being added to watches as a trend in 2025. Now, looking back, and I think beginning with the Fenix 7X, Garmin added dedicated LED flashlights to the front edge of their watches. And what's funny, I actually think that they were a little bit hesitant at first, just because when they actually first began doing this, they actually put a dim cover across the flashlight so that it kind of blended in better with the watch body. But since then, people have been using and loving built-in dedicated flashlights on these Garmin watches. Trust me, this is one of those features that you don't realize how much you need until you have it and you love it. And no, using your AMOLED watch display as a flashlight is definitely not the same thing. But there's no way that other companies and brands are not gonna see this trend and not follow it. It's way too convenient to overlook. And the same thing that can be said for Garmin. I'm actually expecting them to roll down this feature into more and more of their different category watches. Okay, so moving on to some bolder predictions. I'm hopeful that GPS technology with multi-band GPS and much better design of GPS antennas will likely reach a point where accuracy is no longer a significant concern for most users. At this point, my normal runs along a lake with plenty of tree cover is really already a non-issue for Apple watches or most of the Garmin watches that I've tested. What I find interesting is that testing the Amazfit T-Rex 3, a watch that cost $280, or you could find it on sale for significantly less than that, I'm still not seeing any major GPS issues when running my standard runs. And as a side, I do think that this probably has more to do with antenna design than this specific multi-band chip. But more and more companies are figuring this out. And as more and more of these companies figure this out, GPS accuracy just kind of blatantly becomes a non-issue, especially for us testing GPS accuracy. Now, looking beyond the basic fitness tracking, I do think that we should expect some very cool advancements in health monitoring features. So think of better, more accurate stress tracking, better, more accurate sleep monitoring with deeper insights. Already, my Apple Watch has been monitoring my breathing patterns while I sleep, and it will report on things like sleep apnea if it's detected. But I'm hopeful that we'll see things like your blood glucose monitoring right from the optical heart rate sensor that's built into the back of these watches. I would love to see things like your blood pressure being monitored. I do expect that we might see one or the other, probably not both of those features, those kind of high-end health tech features, coming to something like an Apple Watch in late 2025. But I'm wondering what else we could get out of these sensors. I know a lot of professional athletes are really keen to track their lactate levels during workouts, or maybe even their hydration levels. I'm extremely hopeful when it comes to these optical heart rate sensors and what they could potentially do going forward. Now, one of the hardware advancements that I'm most excited about is the introduction of micro-LED displays into modern GPS watches. Apple introduced this technology in their Vision Pro device, but basically you get brighter pixels that are individually controlled, which ends up giving us a brighter and significantly more energy efficient display when compared to AMOLED. Now, maybe this is crazy talk, but I'm actually hopeful that we'll see an Apple Watch Series 11 with multi-day battery life. But maybe I'm just way overly optimistic. Who knows? Now, I'm also a true believer in AI, and I expect much more sophisticated AI-powered coaching features and health insights in 2025. We already have personalized training plans, but I'd love to see more built-in real-time performance analysis, and I'd love to see an AI coach, hopefully one that I don't have to pay for or pay extra for, provide me with real actionable insights, potentially right after I've finished an activity, or even maybe more wild, as I'm in the process of recording an activity. Okay, lastly, beyond simple heart rate or skin contact, I do hope that we will see more sophisticated biometric authentication methods. My Apple Watch can already kind of help me log into a different computer on my network, but I'd still love to see more here. I'd still love to see more built-in methods for authentication. I can definitely imagine, some sort of personal ECG pattern that would recognize me, or something crazy like vein mapping from the optical sensor that's looking at the back of my wrist, or maybe even something as simple as voice recognition for unlocking devices. Or a company could do a combination of different biometric patterns to confirm my identity. It's just frustrating because at this point, going into 2025, I don't feel like I should really have to punch in my password on my watch to access my apps. And I feel like all of these companies, they tell us how secure FaceTime is, and then they turn around and the very next minute, they have us punch in a 4-digit passcode to enable Face ID. And with our watches, being able to make payments or have access to all of this health data, or in general, just contain more valuable information for us, we do want security. I'm just hopeful that we can secure these devices in a less intrusive manner, or a simpler way, or at least a simpler way for the end users. Okay, so there are 10 trends that I'm hoping to see in GPS watches in 2024. Although I will admit that some of them are extremely optimistic. Some of them would even take FDA approval and therefore will most likely be beyond that 2025 timeframe. But I'm hopeful. But what about you guys? What are you guys hoping to see in 2025? Let me know in the comment section. Comment section is right below the video here, and it's right below the like button and the subscribe button there. And of course, GPS watch from the future or no watch at all, I really do hope that you guys are getting out there, swimming, biking, running, rinsing, and repeating it all over again. And we will see you guys on the next one.